what tempted you to come to this meetup as opposed to any of the many other meetups that you could go to? That will help me so I don't just like speak into space.
Hi, Alistair. This is Todd. How are you? I've come to this meetup, the Heart of Agile, because I think Agile as itself has gotten a little too bloated, quite frankly. Too much process. It's becoming more waterfall-y, but that's what we do as human beings. We tend to overcomplicate everything better than any other species. So I'm looking more towards this of just getting back to the core ethos of it and developing product in a way where it's not so much tied on ceremony as it is on getting something out the door, getting something that works, getting feedback, and constantly improving, right? Change is the only constant. So the more time we spend on process, the less time we actually spend on influence and change.
Got it. So what, anybody else in the room?
Hopefully spark some.
Somewhat like he mentioned, I'm Bailey. Agile just seems to be almost like a catchphrase, and it does seem almost watered down in a sense. So kind of like the name of the group, the Heart of Agile, and just getting back down to the roots and what really matters. That's what drew me to Agile in the first place. So
cool. All right, so it's actually interesting because as I started, I was told I have to write the book on the Heart of Agile. And as I was been writing it, I realized that it's got less and less to do with Agile at all. It's got nothing to do with software anymore, and it's got very little to do with Agile. And I was tempted to just call it like Teamwork 2.0 or something like that. And then actually the guy who's the CEO of the Scrum Alliance, Howard Sublett, said, no, don't do that. You have to socialize everybody on what your bright new term means. He said, I would just double down on the word Agile, although it seems to be on the, the trailing slope now, not the rising slope. You don't have to socialize it. So it's kind of weird because all the stuff that I talk about has got less and less to do with Agile as we know it. And when I teach a 2-day Heart of Agile course. I never find the need to mention iteration, Scrum, product owner, backlog, any of those things. They just don't show up. They're just not things. And I don't talk about products. I talk about initiatives. And so it's, every time we do this, we go to the heart of, and I'm writing the book and I go, the Heart of Agile, but like, what are you trying to accomplish? And I go, okay, so it's a motor. What I'm describing is a motor that operates, right? This collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve is a motor. And I'm describing the operation of the motor, not where you're going to go with it, right? So some people say, like Gabrielle Benefield, if any of you want to catch up on her work, it's brilliant. She calls it Mobius, and it's a double loop learning framework. And all of Agile fits like into one of her steps out of 7 steps. She presupposes you're going to do stuff in a, sort of an Agile fashion. She's very interested in, her topic of conversation is how would you know you're getting where you want to go? How would you know that where you want to go is a good place to go? Right, so that's a kind of a macro view, and my stuff is kind of the motor. Assuming you think you know where you want to go in a single loop learning fashion, the collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve is the one learning loop, and Gabrielle Benefield with her Mobius has the second loop of learning where you're checking that your goal is a meaningful goal, right? That's not inside Heart of Agile. So it's a bit weird, right, for me to still call it Agile, and it's got less and less to do with Agile. So I was asked by somebody down in South America that said, hey, Alistair, I want you to sit down with me and tell me what is Heart of Agile so that I can go to some execs in Argentina and Chile and say, this is what it is and this is, what you should do. And most of the time I say stuff usually tongue in cheek. I like talking, half seriously, half joking, or 3/4 serious and quarter joking all the time. And I just keep saying, all I've got is 4 words. That's all I've got. It's 4 words: collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve. There's nothing else. And then there's a question like, all right, so what am I paying for, and what's a consultant going to do, and so on and so forth. And in a sense, it's kind of like a mandala. Now, I looked up the definition for mandala, and it's got all the spiritual stuff with macrocosmos and stuff. And you guys in Boulder can relate to that, right? So it's a mandala. But basically, you just stare at it like you do at any mandala, right? You have a mandala that's supposed to be something about equanimity, and so you look at the mandala and you get into equanimity. These are just 4 words, because life is complicated. And my claim is that with these 4 words, collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve, you can manage your initiatives. And so I don't talk about projects, I talk about initiatives. And so it's just a reminder. It's a reminder. You put this in front of you and you go, all right, how are we doing on collaboration around here, right? What do we need to work on? And you work on that. You go, okay, what do we do to improve micro deliveries and probes and stage deliveries and all of that stuff, right? What's the lean Kanban workflow stuff on the inside? What's the feedback loops on the outside? And you just go after that over and over and over again. And then you say, okay, stop and reflect. Stop. Everybody stop. Put the pencils down. Let's reflect for a while. Okay, now what are we going to improve? And you go around and around. So for me, the big value is just literally having so few words, and they encompass so much. And because I've been staring in particular at the word collaborate for the last, like 4 or 5 years now, it literally has changed my life, the way I run my life personally, professionally, the way I teach, everything. Because when you just say, well, what inhibits collaboration? And you just make that list. And so if you guys want to do a little exercise, at some point after I hang up, just take 3 minutes, literally 3-4 minutes, and brainstorm and list all of the things that inhibit collaboration. All of those things are things you can work on that if you could improve them, you'll improve the net effect of the group. It's that simple. That's why I don't talk about sprints and backlogs. You just go, and I'll give you, I'm dropping in some hooks because I maybe stay on for 20 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. And after I get off, I want to leave you guys some hooks with some things to like discuss, argue, poke into. So if we say at the first level, the heart of Agile is a centering tool. It's got these 4 words. It's got this little, diamond with the heart in the center. And you use it just to like bring yourself back to a central place from which to start investigating. And those 4 words are very useful. So that's part 1. Part 2 is that the people who are, let's say, consultants, Heart of Agile consultants, or people who have been like working in it with it for a while. Me, my number 2 is an Argentinian lady called Sole Pinter, who's now in Brussels. We've just been investigating what's behind that door, the door called collaboration. What's back there? So we've been like rummaging around and we find things. So we've been rummaging around for a while and we bring those things up. And so that's the second level of the Heart of Agile, is kind of the stuff that we found as we go poking around in there. For delivery, it's pretty easy. There's 3 parts for delivery. And I wrote this, it's pretty straightforward. You've got all the internal stuff, right? You're going to deliver something, you have an organization. That's kind of been well cooked by now. You go to the Lean Kanban crowd, Lean Kanban University. You do all the queues, the workflows, all of that sort of stuff, queue management, critical chain, bottleneck stations, right? You do all of that. That's been knocked out. It's okay. You do that. That's the internal part. There's a second part, which is the actual delivery of the thing that you're delivering, whether it's software, product, or an initiative, or recycling, or some NGO, third world thing, or whatever. And what you do is staged rollout. And there's all the math of the staged rollout, incremental delivery, return on investment, self-funding projects, stage deliveries, why you do that, risk mitigation, that's all. Again, that's all pretty standard for, the last 10, 15 years. It's been kind of cooked. A lot of people don't know about some of these things, and we have some graphs that we show. But the interesting part is that is a third one, which is very much, I would say, comes to us through lean startup in particular and modern product management, if any of you are modern product managers. And that's the question of, we know we're doing something wrong and we don't know what it is we're doing wrong. How can we put a probe into the world to find out how the world works differently than whatever we think the world works as? So we're needing to know, we're going to go this way or that way, let's say left or right, choice A or choice B. Modern product managers, and Melissa Perry being one of them. There's a lady by the name of Torres, Angel Diaz Maroto from, I think, Spain is another one. Jeff Gotthelf is another one. Jeff Patton's another one. So these guys are all championing, how can we get feedback within 48 hours at the latest, preferably 24 hours? I want to know, I'm about to make a decision, A or B. Is there a way I could put something into the world and find out if A is better than B? That is a piece of delivery that's very modern, that's very like within the last 5 years, really. And very few organizations can get feedback on things within 24 hours. They can't get something. So when you live in this world, the 2-week Scrum cycle looks insanely slow. Melissa Perry in particular says, I can't wait 2 weeks. I'm making a decision. I can wait a day, but I can't wait 2 weeks for you to put it out, and then I have to wait more time to find out what people do. How do we put something out tonight so that tomorrow afternoon I have information so I can make that decision, right? Product design decisions or directional decisions of whatever kind. And then that's the really interesting part. Inside of delivery, so we've got the internal, we've got the stage delivery, we've got these probes, and the probes are the center of action all over the world, in all fields right now. And when we open the doorway from Heart of Agile and say, let's look at delivery, that's the exciting part, right? That people like me are going after. When you look at reflect and improve always go together. And I split them up on purpose. It was a bit of a gamble when I did that. And because people in my stuff, Crystal, I have a thing called reflective improvement. And in Scrum, they say inspect and adapt. But that's a lot of syllables, and it's 2 concepts mashed together, and people do a lousy job of it. People can't do reflective improvement. They can't do inspect and adapt. It's too much stuff going on. So I split them, and I just made stop and reflect, and then figure out what to improve later. And you reflect means you're looking for insights, and you look at your data analytics, all of that millions of data that you've got there. And yes, emotional information and statistical information. And you merge, how do people feel about things versus what are people clicking on and buying and stuff. And that's information that feeds the reflection. And then out of that, you try to get some insights, and that's the reflection. What do we want? How would we know that it was getting better? That fits inside of reflection. And then in the improve, you're looking for little experiments, small experiments, ideally reversible, things that you can do for a week or 2 weeks, try them out, see if they make any sense at every level. So the second stage of the Heart of Agile is what happens when you go back behind these doors with the 4 words and you start exploring that territory. What do you find? Then that's what now I would say after 4 years that we've got some mass of like, wow, this is what we're finding, and this is what we think is interesting to talk about in 2019. And in 2022, could be a different thing, so it's fine, depending what's going on. I will highlight inside the collaboration behind that doorway is the topic of annual appraisals. And so if you're going to have any discussions afterwards, how would you arrange the annual appraisals? The thing that has to do with the merit raises, the employee raises, and the rating systems and all of that stuff. How do you do that? If you want to improve collaboration, leave out Agile, leave out, just if you want that you get good collaboration, how are you going to do that? That's an open question. So that's a lovely riddle. And I go around the world and I ask people, companies that claim they're doing good Agile stuff, even Spotify, and I say, how do you do your appraisals? They always go, oh, we're not doing well on that. No, we're not doing well on that, right? Nobody will tell me what their appraisal system is and say, this is doing good stuff for us. So I'll leave you that riddle also. What more? So the third, so that's the first is the 4 words, kind of like a mandala or a centering device. The second is the investigation behind each doorway. The third is, it turns out that I personally, and so ergo, I'm pushing it on everybody else. So therefore we, when I say we, it's because I'm pushing it. So be clear on that. I'm pushing a kind of a cultural change. There's a cultural substrate that seems to me to be inevitable, and it fits in, you know, the zeitgeist of the times around the world, but particularly in the US, which is diversity, inclusivity, and things like that. And very particularly, and I was called out yesterday by being too stereotypical in my way of talking about it. It's men and women, and it's not always men and women. Sometimes it's the other way around, but it tends to be weighted more, you know, that men talk over women. And I've had to take this on very deliberately in my classes now, but we do some exercises and there's moments of reflective improvement, and the men just shut down the women like that. And I literally have to intervene. Nowadays, I just say, stop. You can't do that anymore. So I'm trying to create, because this is living in collaboration. If you live in collaboration, you end up getting here. You can't evade it. So I'm trying to create, if you will, a culture of listening. Listening doesn't mean not talking. It just means listening. So it could be that while one person's talking, so I talk a lot, but that means I have to be super sensitive to what all the other people are doing with their body language. They're hiding, they're objecting, they want to get a word in, you know, all of that stuff. You have to, the more you talk, the sharper you have to listen. So you like have to stop talking in a heartbeat to let somebody else in. And that's becoming a cultural platform of the heart of Agile, because I don't see how you can play in the collaboration space without generating the listening that's needed so that everybody can contribute, right? So that's kind of a third level that we're putting that social substrate in there, which is a bit of a surprise. And you know, I'm a programmer. I don't want to go there, but just inevitably, it just seems there's no way to avoid it. So I'm taking that on. Good. So I talked for like 15 minutes or so. It's what I have to offer, like what is Heart of Agile kind of a thing. Could we take a couple of questions and see where you guys want to go, and I'll stay on another few minutes?
All right, who has questions?
I always have questions. So something you said that really hit home, I think, at least for our company, if not other companies, was your discussion around the collaboration and how do we track merit or do appraisals. I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate on that a little bit more, or tell us what you found, or if there are certain processes where people seem, you know, happy and satisfied, because right now we're struggling with that.
Yeah, David said you guys were going to like maybe split into groups and do discussion topics after I leave. And I said, I'll put a few hooks, you know, into my talk so that you guys will have something to talk about. And I warned him that that would be one of them. So the good news for me, which is the bad news for you, but the good news for me, meaning I don't have to answer your request, is that I've never seen anything. I have nothing. I have no data. I have been asking this question for 10 years or more, 10 or 15 years. I have zero to offer you, right? No company is willing to tell me their annual appraisal mechanism as a recommendation for anybody else. All right? They all say, well, we're not, you know, we're doing okay, but we're not really, right? They all say that. So, you know, whether or not I have my opinions, I don't have staff, right? I don't get to try out any of these ideas. I have some opinions, maybe, but I'm not going to tell you what my opinions are, because it's just not my opinions, and then it'll bias you. So I'm going to leave that as a totally blank chapter. Highly recommend you guys go after it. It's an empty space. See what you come up with. Any other topic questions, please?
All right.
So you talked about, the overcomplication of Agile and getting away from, basic principles and concepts. Since we are in really, I mean, we are definitely in a world where Agile practitioners, they're speaking their own language, they're set apart from the rest of the company, that type of thing. How do you bring in the basics like this? How do you bring in this Mr. Miyagi approach when everybody else is, wanting to be Cobra Kai?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think a lot of people are fed up, and so there's an opening there, right? So I come in and say, Agile's become overcomplicated. It's got hardening of the arteries. It's become like a straitjacket. And they'll go, And I say, I just want to focus on the basic elements: collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. And they go, yeah, wow, thank you, right? Now the problem that we get into, obviously, you guys know about Shuhari. Raise your hand if you know the Shuhari progression. Yeah. Those of you who don't, you have to listen to those of you who do. I'm not going to repeat it here. But everybody wants the shoe, right? Everybody wants the, like, yeah, but how do I get started exactly? And I'm trying for the Miyagi approach, right? Wax on, wax off, as the guy in the back was doing over there. My claim is that you don't have to teach anybody how to collaborate. Everybody knows how to collaborate. They don't want to. They don't want to, but they know how, right? And delivery is technical, but you have technical people in charge of delivery. So that's actually not a deep mystery, like this training that you can get and stuff like that. Reflect, people don't do. Yeah, you practice it a few times and you go, okay, I got it, right? And improve's pretty obvious. So my claim is that if someone says, we want to improve, our company, I go, okay, so can we improve collaboration? We're just going to work on these 4 things, right? We're just go straight after collaboration. Leave everything aside. And one of the key differences, if we were to compare, the antithesis would be SAFE, in Heart of Agile. And I used to defend SAFE. It's not, flawed. I don't think it's structurally flawed. It's flawed in the political sense. But structurally, I don't know what I would change inside of it. It's all got all the right words in all the right places. But in SAFE, you pay N million and you change all the job titles of everybody, right? And all that stuff. And at the end of 2 years, you haven't changed any attitudes, and people are still the same people. What I chose to do with the Heart of Agile, which is in a sense a harder program, which is change no titles, change nothing, no job, no structures, nothing. Take half that money and just put it on improving collaboration, straight up. And take the other half and put it on improving delivery, right? Boom. All the probes and the streamlined ELTs and the probes and the feedbacks. And so in that sense, it's an easier sell because it doesn't come with language. It just comes with, you're going to go hire companies that work on trust and collaboration, communication, constructive criticism, appreciative inquiry. You can hire all those things out, right? You can get training in lean, Kanban, feedback mechanisms, continuous delivery, continuous integrate. You can put money on all of those things, but you'll go after them point after point. What will improve delivery? What will improve collaboration? Doom, doom, doom. Are we doing reflective improvement? Doom, 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 doom. Like that. The interesting problem came about a year ago. Somebody in Australia was consulting to the big bank execs. And there's a lot of, all the banks in Australia want to go Agile now. And of course, being banks, they have a hard time with it. And so this guy goes in with the Heart of Agile, and the exec says to him, and he said to me, he said, I want to be a licensed, Heart of Agile trainer, consultant dude. Tell me what I have to tell the execs and so I can do it. And I said, in the Heart of Agile, there's no telling. It's not a tell thing. It's a dialogue thing. It's an inquiry thing. I'll dialogue with you about how you'll dialogue with the exec, about how the exec will dialogue with the employees and the staff about how to do these things. There will be no telling anywhere in the Heart of Agile, anywhere. It's that's some foundational thing. in the personality that we put in. So he writes back and goes, I have a problem with this exec. The exec says to me, hey, I paid you all this money because you're supposed to be an expert, and now you're refusing to tell me anything. Like, tell me the good stuff because you're the expert and I'm paying you the money. And that was a bottleneck for us for a while. And then finally I said, all right, so you know what? That's not your customer. That's not your client. It's good. It's important that things know what they aren't. And that's not what this is. And what has been really, really rewarding for me is to go in a place like in Paris. I was in a French telecom called Orange. It's not the place you expect to find Agile anything. And there was a high-level exec, and I'm not going to tell you anything. I'll just dialogue with you. And he says, thank you. You know, like, I'm not an idiot. I'm so tired of consultants coming in here and pretending to know everything about my business. And they're just going to tell me stuff. Like, I know stuff. But help me understand the parameters and ideas and ways to go forward and ways to get feedback, right? Help me build some insight. And he was actually not French, he was Dutch. He was in his early 40s. But if I look at execs around the world who are now, let's say, between 37 and 42, in this kind of age bracket, many of them are happy to have a dialogue instead of being told. And so that segments are, if you will, the people who will play in the safe, space, or the people who play in the heart of Agile space, if you will. And so that's fine. The people want to be told what to do. I hate to say this, I just know they're going to fail, so I'm not going to spend any time on them, right? And then the people who want to dialogue will find ways to improve things for themselves. So that's a long answer because that was a super meaningful question.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd say is we're trying very hard to build a personality around the heart of Agile, right? So every organization, Agile Alliance, Scrum Alliance, SAFe, Scrum, all of these things end up having a tone of voice, a personality, a way of interacting. And we're trying to be very deliberate. I got onto this because, I go, okay, so I have to live with this thing probably till the end of my life. And I don't know what our mission statement is, but I do know that if it's an unpleasant place to hang out, I'm stuck with it for the rest of my life. So the most important thing to me is to make it like pleasant place to hang out. And there's some people I found. We've got one guy in Australia, one guy in Scotland, Sola in Belgium. There's this nice guy in Belgrade who are just very open, conversational, curious, inquisitive, polite, generous, right? And I just said, that's what I want. So we just like their voices anytime that anybody does something in the tone that we like, we just try to turn the volume up on that. And then when people do things that are not in the tone, that are a little bit closed and greedy or whatever, we just kind of like dial down the volume, just like don't give that a lot of airtime. And that turns out to be pretty important. And that's important now also. If you're doing these meetups, it's really important that that personality come into the meetup also. And I'm really glad that I got to say this finally before I forgot about it because I didn't think about it. But in all of the meetups, all of them are people who are kind of open, generous, inquisitive, asking about stuff, right? All adults, all the backgrounds, right? And doing something with it. And that's the tone that we're trying to build up inside the community. So with that would be, I guess, the last thing that I should say.
All right. Well, thank you, Alistair. We appreciate you coming on here and just giving us all this great information and everything. So everybody, let's give him a hand. Thank you.
All right. And good luck with handling any of the questions that we kind of laid out for you.
Looking forward to some good discussions.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks.